Frank Klose knows his role. He's taking your mailbag questions at 97.3 ESPN.com, but he's got a ton of Phillies news and notes to dive into, including yesterday, Frank. The Phillies have seen enough of Hector Neris. Is this like a slap on the wrist, or is this a permanent demotion?
Well, I don't think it's permanent, but they really got to the point where they just couldn't possibly let him continue to come out and make games as interesting as they ended up on Sunday. I mean, you thought after he had a pretty clean inning on Saturday to get the save, the last 3 outs, you thought, okay, well, maybe he's kind of working his way back. Let's give him another shot to see if this is for real, and he just couldn't do it. So really they had no choice. I don't think they really wanted to. I don't think they really wanted to go as far as adding another player to the 40-man roster, but they really had no choice. So he's got to go down there. He's still on the 40-man roster. That means they might need him at some point because he's on the roster. So hopefully he figures things out as a closer for the Iron Pigs or something. And they really need him to be what he was last year, where he saved 20 games in a row to close out the season.
Well, you just said something that kind of perked my ears up. To go down to AAA and be the closer. The Phillies don't have a closer. They don't use a closer. There's no roles in that bullpen.
Well, I think they only didn't have roles partially because Neris was struggling. I think, one example I like to point to is those 2016 Cleveland Indians, where you saw Andrew Miller kind of be what Sir Anthony Dominguez has been doing, which is to get the important outs, whether it's innings 6, 7, or 8. And then you had somebody behind him to just lock down the ninth. And I think that's a model which works. I think it's a model they like. But they don't have anybody that can lock down the ninth yet. So I think right now a lot of the question is, well, if we blow this game in the 7th inning, then what's the ninth going to matter?
Right.
Well, I think we see now that the games aren't getting blown in the 7th and 8th inning, but they're getting blown in the 9th. That remains a problem.
Right. I mean, there's no Cody Allen on this team. Sure, Andrew Miller is great, but there's no Cody Allen to turn to. And even Cody Allen hasn't been great this year.
It's funny because I think Cody Allen is somebody that the Phillies really should target this offseason. He's going to be a free agent. He's only going to be about 30 years old. He might be exactly what they need. Let Sir Anthony Dominguez be the Andrew Miller. Let Cody Allen be Cody Allen. Yeah,
we were talking a lot about this in the first hour. I don't know if you saw the MLB, tonight piece on Kapler, which was about an 8-minute, go around on him and how, Joel Sherman brought up an interesting point. He said if the save statistic was never invented, would managers manage the game to get the save? In other words, they're managing to get the stats.
In some ways yes, in some ways no. I mean, I think the save became a stat because they got to the point where they recognized that those 3 final outs are perhaps the hardest to get for some people, and they really wanted to make sure that somebody was in that role that has the mental toughness, that has the patience, where you don't let a runner or 2 on, and then all of a sudden you're panicking and you're trying to be too perfect. You need somebody with a mindset that they know even that they're not going to have a perfect season. They're not going to be 2008 Brad Lidge, that they will have a blown save here or there, and it doesn't let them get down. So you need somebody sort of with that mentality. So I think if that never existed, it kind of naturally would have happened anyway, because people would recognize, as we're seeing with this Phillies team, those last 3 outs are very hard to get.
They are hard to get. Frank Klose is with us. The mailbag is open. So, Frank, Dalt wants to know, with the move the Nationals made, getting their closer and the recent struggle of the Phillies bullpen, do you see the Phillies making a similar move soon or closer to the end of July?
Yeah, one thing that was a little disappointing was that the Washington Nationals picked up Kelvin Herrera from the Kansas City Royals. I thought what the Nationals sent to the Royals was not necessarily a whole lot. They sent a third base prospect who might be a utility player, an outfielder who maybe not be a starter in the league, and a pitcher, Johannes Morel, who is still at the very lower levels of the minor leagues, and we really don't know what he's going to be yet. So I thought the Phillies could have at least matched that offer without giving up some of their important pieces. But maybe it caught him by surprise that he was traded at this time of the year. And I think if the Royals are ready to deal now, last week we were talking Mike Moustakas, maybe there's other deals to be made, but the Phillies, I think they would like to pick up a veteran reliever if they have the opportunity. But again, I think what's going to happen is they were prepared when the season began to sort of take their lumps where they had to, being patient to not burn their assets, so that when you get to this free agent class in the off season, they have the ability to do some things. Now, Craig Kimbrell's going to be available in the off season. We just talked about Cody Allen being available in the off season. I can easily see the Phillies, in addition to adding a big bat, getting one of those types of guys. I mean, Craig Kimbrell is going to have to be really plucked away from the Red Sox, who don't necessarily want to lose him. But if he gets the free agency, the Phillies have money, maybe they can get a Kimbrell. But Cody Allen would really be a good person for this Phillies bullpen, because they have Dominguez to pair with him. So I think they know they're going to hit their lumps. I think they thought Neris would be better than this. Again, Neris finished last season with 20 straight saves. He went from June 21st until the end of the season without blowing a save. And of course, on his second save opportunity this year, he blew his first save. But I think they thought that the bullpen would be a little bit stronger. You thought that you'd have Pat Neshek. You thought you'd have Tommy Hunter from the start. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened, and luckily, Sir Anthony Dominguez really rose through the system really fast, so they might be in a tough spot. So I think the Phillies will try to add an arm for the bullpen of a veteran nature, particularly if Pat Neshek isn't able to come back. But I don't think they're going to pick up anybody that's going to cost them too much.
Quickly on that bullpen, Frank, I want to interject with a couple of quick questions. One, if Neshek comes back, he's an all-star. I mean, this is a legit guy. Do you think that could stabilize some roles, or at least give him a guy that he doesn't have to go to Dominguez for 2 innings all the time? And two, are there any other Dominguez's hanging around the minor leagues, these young guys that quite frankly, who heard of Sir Anthony Dominguez before the season started? He kind of just came out of nowhere. Is there a young electric arm that's hanging in the weeds down there that maybe they can call upon?
Well, in some respects, Dominguez, I think he wasn't on everybody's radar, but I definitely think he was on the Phillies' radar. I thought they had high hopes for him to try to move up quickly. In fact, I thought there was an outside chance he made the team out of spring training, but he started the year in the minors. The one thing I really would keep my eye on is, and I actually plan to write about this later, that Enyel De Los Santos that the Phillies got in exchange for Freddie Galvis this offseason. He can't not pitch a good game right now. I have to look at the exact numbers, but last I looked, he was 81, and ERA lower than 2. I didn't check up on his last start, but De Los Santos might force his way into the rotation. So what I really think the Phillies should start to do is to say, okay, which of our starters should we really try to transition to the bullpen? And it's kind of hard because Vince Velasquez has had some really good starts. Like, remember, he was just the other day, he was pitching a no-hitter into the 7th inning. You see stuff like that, and you say, well, no, Velasquez can't go into the bullpen. But at the same time, he has a clunker, here and there as he does. And is that enough consistency in the starting rotation to merit keeping him there? But if the Phillies can take one of their starting assets, maybe it's Zach Eflin right now, maybe they work on Ben Lively, maybe it is De Los Santos with that electric arm that they give him a shot in the bullpen first. I think they need to be creative and try to develop the next bullpen arm instead of essentially bringing people through the system as relievers, because, even the likes of Brad Lidge, went on to be a great major league closer, like Billy Wagner went on to be a great major league closer. They were all people that were starters in the system until they entered the major league. So I would take a look around and see, maybe we don't have the relievers handy to come up, but what can we do with some of these extra starters?
Frank, key moment in last night's game. Andrew Knapp fails to block a wild pitch, and the Cardinals end up tying the game. Now, I don't know if Chrissy wrote this question before or after that sequence happened, but she wants to know, what do we do about the backup catching situation? It's not the number one concern, but usually they're at least good defensively. And, of course, that play then happened last night.
Yeah, this was after the game, I will say. But, Andrew Knapp, unfortunately, he hasn't really cut it at the plate. I mean, he's been a little bit better lately, but the defense is the big concern. I mean, if the Phillies went on to lose that game, I mean, that would have been a devastating loss. I mean, I thought a ball like that, the catcher should get his body in front of whatever it takes, because then then the game's over. But to lose a game like that could be absolutely demoralizing. And luckily, the Phillies responded and got another couple runs even after Jake Thompson gave up another one. But I think the problem right now is there's just not a lot of supply of quality veteran major league catchers that are good receivers. Now, the Phillies just played a couple series against the Brewers, and look, Eric Kratz is still hanging around. He's 38 years old. Why is Eric Kratz on a major league roster? Because, at that age, well, he's a quality backstop. He doesn't hit a whole lot. I mean, he has a nice hit here or there, but teams are willing to give people like him chances to be at least the guy who's the AAA ready to come up if there's an issue. Now, if you look at the Phillies system, they signed Matt McBride as sort of the veteran catcher type, but they've been playing him at first base at AAA. So I don't really know if internally they have anybody to swap him out for. And then even if they did, there's the problem of there not being anybody on the 40-man roster no room on the 40-man roster to add somebody right now. So they're kind of in a tough spot. But all of baseball, if you look around, so many backup catchers sitting under 200 aren't necessarily, the best defenders either. It just seems to be a short position in baseball. And, this year the Phillies did something which a lot of other teams don't necessarily have. Well, Bob Stumpo, he got promoted to catching instructor, and Craig Driver was named the receiving instructor. So, they're trying to invest some resources and trying to get the most out of the ones they have. I think if the Phillies were a lot closer to contention, they would make it more of a priority. But right now, I think they've just for lack of better options, they really need to stick it out and see what they can get out of Andrew Knapp.
And as you look at the roster, Frank, Chris wants to know, are there more gaping holes in this roster than the front office thought?
Well, I think they thought that there would be some holes. I think going into the season, they wanted to see for sure is Vince Velasquez a member of our rotation. We want to see for sure is Jared Eichhoff a long-term solution in this rotation. Is Mike Calfranco going to be the Phillies' third baseman long-term? And, none of those guys have necessarily jumped in and grabbed that role or answered that question very, very well. So I think the Phillies kind of knew that might happen. I think the one gaping hole that they thought that they plugged was to have a veteran in the bullpen that could get 3 outs, no problem, and with Pat Neshek. I think when the Phillies signed him, they were really hoping that he could be what he was for them last year. Now, if you remember last year, he was kind of pitching maybe every other day, no more than 1 inning at a time. But when Pat Neshek came into the game, you knew what you were getting with Pat Neshek. And just imagine having 2017 Pat Neshek on this Phillies team now. You could argue that they could have a few more wins just with Pat Neshek here. So I think in terms of gaping holes, that's the one gaping hole that they have right now in the bullpen. But, at the same time, you might say, hey, if Neshek was around, maybe Sir Anthony Dominguez would have had the opportunity right away and been able to do what he did. So it's kind of hard to say that there's a gaping hole. I think the Phillies knew that there were going to be some players that just weren't going to factor into their long-term plans, but this was the year to find out. They're looking at that 2018 free agent class and ready to spend some money.
It almost seems like, Frank, they're trying to serve two masters. Like they want to look to the future, but they kind of – the signing of Santana and Arrieta suggests they want to win now. But, what they're doing with Crawford and Kingery and some of these other guys kind of say, well, we're evaluating for the future.
Yeah, I think though when you add an Arrieta, when you add a Santana on a 3-year deal each, it's not a major long-term commitment, and it's somebody that can sort of get things stable now. Now, Santana, I know a lot of people were frustrated at his batting average early on, but he is still getting on base all the time. And if you look at his on-base percentage, it's much, much better than his batting average, which, by the way, also continues to rise. So I think they're good investments for later. I don't think they were necessarily, well, let's win right now type signings, because even when I was down there at the area signing in Clearwater, asking questions to Matt Klentak, well, if you've gone this far, why not go a little bit deeper and look at some of those names that were out there, like Lance Lynn, right, and Alex Cobb from Tampa that was still sitting out there. And they basically said, no, we think we're good for right now. So I don't think they wanted to go for broke, but they did want some stability. They did want a veteran presence, and I thought that's what those two guys brought for this season, although that helps them build the bigger picture long term.
He's Frank Klose. He covers the Phillies. He has for a long time, at Frank Klose with a K. And, of course, you can send him your mailbag questions each and every week and listen for them here on the Sports Bash. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, guys.